Good afternoon, guys. It's Joe and Justin for VMP's Tuning Tuesday, episode 41. I know that we all just coming back from Labor Day weekend. I, thinking it was Monday, put on my normal t-shirt today instead of my Pollo.
Hey, I'm more dressed up than you today.
You are. Nothing really super exciting in the Mustang community that I saw over the weekend. Anything that you saw?
A lot of people watched our 18 intake, our Coyote intake manifold shootout video.
The plastic intake shootout?
Yeah. So that was that. You know, we went to the track yesterday, did some testing. Not yesterday, Sunday. Did some testing on Rebecca's car. Going back out again tonight.
Nice.
But in the general Mustang world, I mean, it's just kind of business as usual.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. Is tonight like a event night?
It is a private rental night.
Okay. I was like, man, am I missing out on something? I guess we'll segue into the topic of conversation that I saw posting up on a lot of the Mustang forums was our intake manifold test, as you alluded to. A lot of people talking about that. Is there any like keynotes or anything you want to talk about on that, or?
Yeah.
You want to talk about those questions that people had on YouTube?
Steve Turner's doing a story which is going to reveal some more information. It's going to be on Ford Next later this week, so that's the first thing that I'll plug.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, having done 22-something dyno pulls on half a dozen different intakes,
mm-hmm.
like, I could talk about them forever,
mm-hmm.
but you could really group it into stuff that doesn't make power and stuff that makes power.
Yeah,
so exactly. It's kind of surprising how closely matched they were. I mean, I guess that goes to show what a bad mofo the Coyote motor is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like different shapes of curves and stuff. That's where the devil is in the details there. And then you start weighing in like the appearance
mm-hmm.
and the cost. I know some people want to be like all sleeper-ish,
mm-hmm.
and then other people want like the look of the Boss manifold.
Which is a good look.
Yeah.
I like it. I like the Boss and Cobra Jet from a nitrous standpoint, just because it less concerned about puddling issues and stuff like that. But I don't know. I kind of like them all. But at the end of the day, I want the one that achieves the best performance. And based on what I saw in the video, it looked like 18 and Cobra Jet were the way to go. With GT350 close to Cobra Jet, but not close to Cobra Jet, close to 18, but then you have to weigh the cost aspect of it.
I mean, because what's a GT350 intake up to these days? I mean, if anybody watching has recently purchased one, just tell us what you paid for it. Because, I mean, when it came out 2 years ago, I think it was like $900, $1,000. Now it's creeping up in price, $1,200, $1,300.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
It's all good.
So, yeah, I mean, that's money you could be putting towards a blower.
Yeah.
So if there's a cheaper alternative, I think people are going to be all for it.
Exactly. Speaking of Miss Carrie out in the back, what we got coming across?
So we did get a number of questions on YouTube regarding the intake the shootout.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ones were MRC's active of locked on the 18. I installed an 18 with locked IMRCs. I was told they are a pain to tune with them active.
So I guess that's kind of two questions, two answers. First question, were IMRCs active? IMRCs were active, but at wide open throttle, if your tune's configured properly, the IMRCs open at wide open throttle. So for the duration of the dyno pull, IMRCs were open. In reference to getting the car tuned with IMRCs, as long as everything is wired properly and the vacuum harness is assembled correctly, and there's no mechanical installation errors, the tuning with IMRCs is not an issue.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually, honestly, it's easier. Now, I will tell you, we had to do quite a bit of legwork to get the wiring right, the tuning right, the tuning parameters to allow the IMRCs and all the associated logic to work right with them. That was really, that's why it's more difficult. But we've figured all that stuff out. So our harnesses are set, our tunes are set.
We're also being asked which throttle body was used for the Cobra Jet.
I'll let you get that one.
We used a VMP Twin 67.
Also, there was quite a bit of feedback that came through from the standpoint that they were requesting, or a lot of people are requesting, whether or not there are some other manifolds that we would consider testing.
I saw that.
In particular, they wanted to know whether or not we would consider ported trucks, the ported CJ, Edelbrock Victor 2, the Holly Sniper.
Is the Edelbrock on the market?
I think it is. I know that like American Muscle and stuff sells it.
Yeah, because I feel like we haven't gotten like any tune requests for it.
I've only tuned for one of them.
Tuned for one of them. Because I mean, that was, I mean, it's PRI or SEMA 2 or 3 years ago. That was like a big thing, is Edelbrock was coming out with something. And back then, I think all we had was the Boss, and the CJ was just coming out.
So the Edelbrock would have been good for the guys running 25, 30 pounds turbo or Century setup.
A nice casting that will hold some boost. And then the Holly Sniper. Hey, like if anybody has one of these intakes like sitting in a box and you haven't installed on your car yet, that would be awesome if you could loan it to us, because like buying all these intakes gets kind of
redundant.
Yeah. The shipping department actually complained about, like, you know, what's all this stuff for? I'm like, oh, it's R&D parts. You know?
Exactly.
Where do we put it? It's not in inventory yet.
Yeah, that, and it's like once we've installed it on the car, we can't sell it as new. So now we have all these intake manifolds laying around that we've used that we now have to try and sell used, that we're, I mean, that we're basically eating the cost on for the sake of bringing people the information.
Yeah, so if you got some intakes to loan us, I think we could definitely do a Shootout 2.0.
Yeah, if you want dyno numbers before you put it on your car, send it to us. We'll get dyno numbers on it and send it back to you.
And along those notes, now I'm intrigued, because I was talking with Brett Barbo at Airflow Solutions, who does the porting. You know, he does cylinder heads, he does intake manifolds, whatever, and he sciences that shit out with flow benches and CNC machines. We're actually running one of his ported lower intakes on Rebecca's car tonight at the track. But he's got me thinking about the truck intake. He says that the 18 truck intake is longer runner, but still has the big port volume. So it'll be interesting to see where that would fall.
I'd say it'd probably fall similarly to what the 11 to 14 truck intake did, just probably a little bit more peak power. But I guess the only way to really know is throw it on the dyno.
Yeah.
So anyway, guys, if you guys have not seen the video, head over to our YouTube channel, and the video went live. It dropped on Friday. Feel free to add comments or questions down on the video itself, and the guys are kind of going through and monitoring them and seeing what we can do to fulfill any requests we have.
And just a heads up, if you were already subscribed to us, you would have gotten a notification over the weekend when the video dropped. So
which is true. And
if you're not getting notifications, hit that subscribe button up there and set us up to be a notification for you.
And truth be told, we have a couple of more exciting videos that are going to be dropping in the next few weeks. So we have a few things up our sleeves that we haven't released yet. So if you subscribe, you'll be in the know when it comes. We have a couple of questions coming in here. Brian Mockridge says, running your Gen2R on an 07 GT500 engine with E85, how many degrees of timing should I be running?
There's not a should. There's a can or will.
Sorry, Joe. You're just very, there's not a should.
Yeah, well, they ask for a very concise answer on a very wide spectrum thing.
Let me pull this out of my handy pocket reference.
Exactly, my Rolodex little thing.
Can you tell me what year you were born?
If you're running a Gen2R blower with like what we'll call anything like a 2.4 pulley roundabout-ish, it really depends on how aggressive you're wanting us to get with the car or truck. If I recall correctly, yours is a GT500 engine in a truck. If you want us to be aggressive, we can run 22, 23 degrees. If you want us to be kind of mild, kind of keep things a bit more conservative, 19, 20 degrees. Anywhere within that range of like 19 degrees and 22 degrees is kind of like what I feel comfortable with. 23 on a stock motor is kind of like, well, if you want to really make a number or really get everything you can out of it at the track, all right, cool, we'll try out 23, but try and keep it at 19 to 22 range on a setup. Gen2R 2.4 pulley E85.
Joshua says on a 14 GT, what do you guys think about auto blip for a manual transmission, and do you know if it will affect the tune?
I think he's talking about that module I've heard a little bit about that automatically blips the throttle. I've seen some decent online feedback about it. I haven't personally tested one to see how exactly it's commanding the throttle blip and how it's interacting with a stock ECU. I'd imagine that if people aren't complaining about it yet, it's not causing problems, but I don't want to come out and tell you that it's not going to cause issues for you.
I mean, the idea sounds cool, and if I designed one, it would have control of the pedal, and it would read RPM, and it would be it'd be closed loop with a PID controller on RPM, so it gives it an appropriate amount of pedal. The only thing is, with ETC and all, could you drive in a weird part of the pedal map that you wouldn't normally drive in? You know, it could potentially, on some very highly modified combos, maybe make them fail-safe if they get into an abnormal driving condition trying to blip it.
The only thing I can think of is that you'd have to trigger the auto blip on clutch input, and that would kind of negate that. But then you got to make sure that the ECU is not looking for throttle to be X and then it's Y, or to make sure that the...
I mean, you've got stuff like clutch protection, potentially limiting torque when the throttle's not engaged. So maybe if you did it, or when the clutch is not engaged, so if you did it on a totally stock car with clutch protection turned on, you might run into some issues.
Yeah, my only other concern is if you're doing a clutch protection, or clutch enable, then when you push in the clutch at idle slow speeds, would you have a vehicle speed input to kind of tell it, hey, don't auto blip it below this vehicle speed or something like that? So I guess to more directly answer your question, or to make this a shorter thing, I haven't worked with it, so I don't know how the logic works. I'd like to get one and make sure that it's not going to cause issues, so I can more accurately give you an answer.
It sounds like a cool idea. If it's done really well, there's a potential for it to work, I think, but there's some little things like Joe mentioned. If it's not referenced to vehicle speed, I mean, you almost need a map of, well, you need a map of gear ratio versus how much to blip it.
Yeah, so that you know, so that your RPMs don't overshoot or undershoot for the gear change. But then you have to do a calculation of OSS and engine speed to calculate where you need to be for that next gear change and stuff like that. So,
Daniel Lopez wants to know, will E85 damage the stock fuel components in my S550 GT?
I have not seen a case where it will damage the stock fuel components, as long as it's not like an abnormally old fuel or fuel that's been sitting for an insane amount of time.
Big Daddy Trucker, if I order a VMP Stage 1 kit, is there tax and shipping?
Well, that's a sales question.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a dealer, there's no tax as long as you're you send us your
sales tax certificate for Florida.
Like your sales tax ID. But most of the time, you're still going to get shipping.
Although, right now, we do have a sale.
Right now, we're doing free shipping on the whole website. That's in conjunction with our Labor Day sale, so that ends today. And if you're not in the state of Florida, there's no tax on it. But if you are in the state of Florida, there's tax. So
how does that? I guess that's a topic for another day. Of the whole. I know that there was some legislation recently where they were trying to push sales tax for internet-based sales in other states. Is that like something where that might be a considering factor in what he's talking about?
Yes. A lot of people buy stuff from out of state, so they don't have to pay sales tax. And technically, at the end of the year, you're supposed to file a form with your state taxing authority letting them know all the stuff you purchased out of state and submitting a check for the sales tax that you owe. Because it's called sales and use tax because you are using it in that state, so therefore you owe them tax on it.
Okay, so that's not something that we need to collect at time of sale. That's something that the customer needs to follow their rules with?
Yeah, that's traditionally how it works. And you're really only able to hold businesses accountable for that because they get audited and stuff like that. But our Supreme Court has passed a law, has made a ruling that states that you can basically tax everything everywhere. So probably in the next 1 to 2 years when it gets figured out, there would be no more sales tax games. And
the government's going to get their piece.
Yeah, every state government's going to get their piece. Yep. So eBay, Amazon, however you freaking buy it.
Lou B wants to know, does octane booster work well with E85 as well?
Do not use octane booster with E85.
Yeah, like E85's got a lot of octane anyways. So, and it's, yeah.
I'm not aware of a ethanol-based octane booster.
I was going to say, yeah, I've never heard of one either. I mean, I imagine it's going to mix differently than it was going to with gasoline-based fuel.
If you're mixing it with a gasoline-based fuel, I'd imagine that the stoic point of what you're mixing in is similar to a gasoline-based fuel, whereas if you're using a booster that's designed for gasoline-based fuel, then is it...
Gonna rich in.
You're probably talking 3264 ounces, but at the same time, is that going to mess up the stoic point of the fuel?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'll have to ask Boostain about that when they're here later this month.
Yeah, it'd be a good question for
him. Melvin says, great work with the intake shootout. Lots of info there, and greetings from Puerto Rico.
Thanks, awesome, Melvin.
GZ Stang says, if I buy a short box standard cab 18 F150 and throw a blower on it, should I buy a 4-wheel drive or 2-wheel drive? I saw a guy with pretty impressive 60 foots with a 4x4, but worry about it breaking.
My vote is if you're going to do drag racing on a track, have the suspension and the tires set up to run a 2-wheel drive truck. At the end of the day, the 2-wheel drive truck is going to be lighter. And if you have the right tire and suspension setup, you should be able to 60 foot every bit as well as a 4-wheel drive truck. If you're going to do a lot of shenanigans from a dig on the street, then get a 4-wheel drive truck.
Yeah, I mean, like Joe said, like rear-wheel drive is always better. It's also known as right-wheel drive. So
diggity daffodil.
Yeah, hey.
As opposed to wrong-wheel drive?
Yeah.
Would that be front-wheel drive?
It's something like that. Okay. Yeah. But there's certainly nothing like, you know, just switching it in 4-high and just going, though. But like Joe said, it's heavier. And
at the end of the day, if you're drag racing, weight is going to be one of your biggest enemies next to traction.
Now, one of their concerns, the damage to the 4-wheel drive system, we have been lucky. We have not encountered any issues with our 4-wheel drive when drag racing it. We haven't seen really any customers either. I will say that the new 15-up F-150s, they're pretty light, which just generally makes things easier on powertrain components.
Adam Kelly says, hello guys, just bought a new 18 GT. I plan on going NA for a while until maybe when y'all come out with a blower down the road. What would be the first things that y'all suggest to do? Also, would Ford know if I tune the car even if I put it back to stock?
If you have a concern about warranty, a valid concern about warranty, and you really want to use your warranty in the future to get Ford to pay for something that you did to the car or that you modified, then I wouldn't really suggest doing anything tuning related. With that being said, can they directly tell that a car has been flashed with an aftermarket tune? No. Can they tell that the car has been flashed with X amount of key cycles, or can they tell that the ECU has been reset on key cycles within X period of time and then infer based on the mileage the vehicle's at that it may have been flashed or the battery's been disconnected over X period of time? Yes. But they cannot directly say with 100% certainty that the car has been tuned with an aftermarket tune unless you bring it in on the aftermarket tune and they somehow pulled the file off and figured out the differences between the stock file and the tune.
It's a complicated situation, and it's a question we often get. And of course, we never recommend warranty fraud or abuse or anything like that because that just makes it more expensive for everybody. But, you know, and Joe's advice is great, you know, to put some of that stuff in perspective. Like, you know, usually there's not really an issue. We have dealerships that we work with that we tune their cars for them and stuff. You know, if you blow a motor with a power adder, most people, that's like the biggest risk. And most people at that point, they want to build the engine to handle more power anyways.
Exactly.
So, and I guess where I was going with this too is that, you know, most of the time the Ford dealer doesn't ask unless you go in there with a drivability concern, and then they're going to say, well, is it tuned? Okay, we'll take the tune off and see if the drivability concern goes away.
Exactly.
But just be smart about it. Like, you know, Ford's only going to give you trouble if it's a part of the car you modified.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you can do modifications to the car, and if your air conditioner core goes out, as they do apparently on S550s, it's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
R4 forward? No, R4. I don't know. Want a bigger throttle body for my GT500 and Gen3 blower. Are there any issues with the VMP 160 and sticking failsafe?
I only recommend the 160 and the 173 for highly modified vehicles right now. Things with aftermarket camshafts largely. They behave well. Kind of the nature of big throttle bodies. We're looking at some other offerings for totally stock cars that want to make more power. But and it's power nonetheless, but I did the test, I think it was, and actually that'll be out in a video soon. It's about 20-25 rear wheel between a 67 and a 160 at the 800 wheel level.
Makes sense. Right in line with what we've seen with other throttle body testing around that boost level.
Right.
Gary wants to know if you can find a 99 to 04 Lightning for a decent price, is it worth it to try and make it fast, 700 plus wheel?
No.
Actually, 750 plus wheel.
Just get a Coyote truck.
Yeah, I mean, a decent Lightning is probably going to run you in the range of 8,000 to 15,000. To get it in the 750 wheel range, you need injectors, fuel system, aftermarket blower. Should really have a built bottom end in it. Most 2-valve guys do cams. At that point, do TFS heads. You could be into it in a decent amount of money to get that power level out of it when you could get like a 15-17 single cab F150, throw one of our VMP blower kits on it, and throw it on race gas and be at a similar power level.
Chad is going backwards. He says, speaking of the VMP Twin 67 earlier, was very anxious to run the Mono 160. Any news on running the 160 or 170? Chad Dowd.
As Justin stated before, highly modified cars it generally isn't an issue. Cars with aftermarket camshafts or locked out cams, stuff like that, it's not a problem. It seems to only be a problem on cars that are relatively stock or at that still very low end of modifications.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what the Twin 67 was designed for. Stock-like idle quality, stock-like drivability. There's probably a couple thousand of them out there at this point, and our issue rate with those things is almost non-existent.
Micah wants to know, what can he do for his Coyote swapped Hellcat? He's got an 18 Coyote 5.0 swapped Hellcat and wants to know, can y'all tune it?
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sure.
As long as it's on the Dodge computer, right?
He's asked like 4 times, so.
Man, we're getting popular. We're getting trolled.
Oh, man.
Einar says, hi guys, thanks for the intake manifold test. I currently have a Power Pack 2 on my 17 GT, and 91 is the only fuel that is easily available here in Iceland.
Okay.
I have not had any issues with the 87 millimeter, but wouldn't the ported 18 be a good addition and maybe make more use of the 87 millimeter throttle body and also allow to spin the engine to 7,500?
So you can spin the engine to 7,500 with or without the intake manifold. But he said he's running a stock intake manifold with an adapter to run the GT350 87 millimeter throttle body.
You know, I don't know if the Performance Pack 2 comes with a throttle body with an adapter or how that all works out, but
I want to say PP2 is, or no, PP3 is GT350 intake manifold, GT350 throttle body, GT350 cold air. PP2 may just be the throttle body and adapter plate and the cold air. So I would say that the 18 GT intake manifold would be a good buy, and running the 87 millimeter throttle body on it shouldn't be an issue.
Jonathan wants to know, does changing the F150 on a 2017 firing order make more power?
Not that I've seen, no.
Kevin says, what is the deal with the Flonic spacers. Will I need longer bolts for the intake? What is the revised feed bracket? And will I need one for the 12 Roush Stage 3?
Was that Kevin Lynch?
Kevin Lynch, yes sir.
So the bolts that are needed to swap the phenolic spacer in are included in the kit. The upper FIAD bracket I referenced in the little review thing I did on TVS Kinnybell Whipple Coyotes is not something that I'd say is absolutely necessary. I've been running it on my truck for a couple thousand miles now. I haven't had any issues with belts walking off or anything like that. It's mainly just to me, from like if everything in a perfect world was perfect situation, I'd have that other bolt there in a revised FIAD bracket. There isn't currently a revised FIAD bracket that solves that bolt issue, but as I said, it hasn't been an issue thus far. And did he have one more question on the phenolic spacers?
Well, and I think the other thing is he wants to run, there's an updated FIAD bracket from Roush that's been out for several years now that has 5 mounting points versus 3. So if you have the 3 mounting point version, it's kind of weak already. It wouldn't be a bad idea to get the 5.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you're on the 3 bolt FIAD bracket, upgrade to the 5 bolt, and that may not be as much of an issue. My truck has the 5 bolt FIAD. Yeah,
and if your kit was installed in 2012 or early 2013, you could have one of those original FIAD brackets.
Aham says, does the heat shield for the GT350 intake manifold really work as advertised?
You had done some dyno testing on the heat shield. I want to say he's talking about the
the
aluminum backed foil thing.
Yeah, we did dyno test that on my GT350, and I had to like try to get the car really freaking hot on the dyno back-to-back pulls. For $100, I'd say it's worth it.
Jonathan says he's got a F150 2015 plus Gen 3 VMP blower and dyno. He says, it's not making sense. I want to some numbers. So I guess with that setup, he wants to know what approximate numbers will be.
If it's on 93, what would you say, like 630 at a moderate boost level on Gen 3, and then as you turn it up, the gains obviously go up, but at that point you're kind of limited by octane.
Yeah, we're seeing about 50 rear wheel increase on stock motor. So depending on where you started out and how hard you're spinning your Gen 2 or Gen2R right now, or your Roush blower, but it makes more power where we had trouble making more power before on a stock motor. Like the stock motor in the F150s, lower compression, the cams aren't as good, so it's harder to make power with it. Like we tapped out around 650 to 675 with a 2.3 on gasoline-based fuel. So now we're going over 700 with Gen 3.
We're being asked again, and since we already answered it, Lou wants to know again, does octane booster work with E85? And the recommendation was not to use octane booster with E85. They answered that probably about 15 minutes ago, but I figured I'd just throw it out there again since it's coming up.
Doesn't hurt.
Italian Stang says, hello all, question on manifold test. Did the test request different tunes for each of the manifolds, or did you use a standard OEM tune? And thank you, keep it going.
So did it request different tunes? I think he meant like require different tunes. I think the only one that would necessarily require a different tune just from an empirical intake manifold advantage only test, that the Cobra Jet would be the only one that really required a tune update for dyno purposes.
Yeah, we had to, tune according to the different hardware. And that's a tough one because like we were tuning to make the stuff work together, not necessarily tuning to change the numbers. So we kept everything as consistent as we could tuning wise, and we kept it very consistent tuning wise, spark and air fuel and cam timing, and just looked at the performance of the manifolds.
Steven says he's got a 16 supercharged F150 with multiple four-wheel drive launches on 35-inch tires and no problem so far.
Damn.
Nice.
Nickel White says, what's the best rear tire setup for the 18A10 355 gear, 28-inch tires or 26-inch?
If you look at the guys out there running A10s on naturally aspirated setups, the fastest cars seem to be running as much gear as they can possibly get or as much mechanical advantage as they can possibly get. The drawback with running a smaller diameter tire is you're going to slightly change the characteristics with which the car launches and how the suspension kind of behaves because of that. But it's kind of the easier thing to do than swapping gears is swapping tires. So the 26s, in theory, would be a little bit faster if they hooked up the same as compared to the 28, just because of the higher effective final drive. But again, a tough call because it's going to change a couple other aspects of the launch.
Yeah, it's kind of, 26s look ugly on an S550.
Yeah, I would rather see a 28 on the car if you can change the gear ratio in the rear end.
And stock's like what, 27 and a quarter?
Yeah, some of the packages it's around like 27.4.
Jonathan says F150 15 plus Gen 3 VMP information. So he's looking for info.
Said 18 plus?
15 plus.
15 plus?
So we'll call that 15 to 17?
Yeah. It's available as a Stage 3 F150 kit, so it runs good. We got a bunch of them out there. It's what is on our truck.
James says, on the track pace car, what were the mods on the car during the shootout? Cams, headers, etc., as well as octane.
Oh yeah, that question came up. So on Track Attack, the Track Attack car, what did we have on it? So the car has Dynatech 1 7/8 long tube headers and Cervini side exhaust. So it breathes really good, and I think that's why it makes so much horsepower in general. Because you got to figure 450, 460 for a Gen 2 Coyote, we're calling those these days. That's actually pretty good. And I'll tell you, the 93 that was in it, it took 27.5 degrees of timing. It was strong. We don't usually get that much timing into a naturally aspirated car.
Yeah, I'd say that on the higher end of 93 cars, I've seen some cars take 30.
Okay.
But it's not common at all. I'd say that's probably the 10% of the 93ers, whereas 26, 27 is about like I'd say like the 70th percentile of what I see.
It's like your average best case.
Exactly.
I mean, some cars will only run 23, 24 up top. And I mean, they'll still dyno pretty decently. It's just that car had a lot of things going for it. And I'll tell you as well, it's a 331 car. We swapped pumpkins with somebody because of the blower. So I think it does better because of that as well.
I see we're getting some likes coming through on Facebook, and so I wanted to throw it out there that if you like this program, give us thumbs up.
Like it up.
And the share helps
like and
too.
share, like and share.
Share to your page, share to your friend's page. Tag your friends that want to know more about Mustang and Ford tuning and naturally aspirated intake manifolds and supercharger dyno results and all the other stuff that me and Joe do.
The more you like and share, the more we can continue doing this, and the more we can hear your requests and bring videos like the intake shootout. Brian wants to know, what do you guys normally set the IAT to start pulling timing?
I'd say start around 126 to 130. It starts getting progressively more aggressive past 150. If you're up over 170, it gets fairly aggressive there.
And that's because at 170, like, your intercooler pump has usually failed.
Yeah.
And it's save the ship from sinking.
Exactly. And on some guys, like sometimes we'll get data logs back on stage kits where someone doesn't have the intercooler pump primed properly. And I'm actually so aggressive with timing at 190, 200 degrees that I've seen cars adding timing back in.
Oh, with the knock sensor, nice.
Yep.
And like, honestly...
But that's perfect case though, because like if they had a knock sensor issue or a code that caused knock sensors to not run, you don't want the car to be 3-4 degrees positive knock at 180 IAT2. Yeah, I'd rather have it adding in.
Yeah, exactly. And like, you want the car to feel like it's slow and there's something wrong with it, so you can fix it.
Because something is wrong with it.
Yeah, before it blows up.
Yeah.
Very high downstreams cause shit to blow up.
Yeah.
I do want to say on E85 or race gas, we raised the threshold at which we pull timing to about 150, 160 to give you that performance edge because the octane is there to support it.
Exactly.
Let's see what we have. Slab Check says, I want to add a 10% lower to a 2.4 upper on a 14 GT500 ported Trinity with full exhaust. What do you suggest? E85, booster pumps, or injectors?
All of the above.
Yeah. What year did you say the car was?
14 GT500.
Yep.
Yeah, if you're going to a 10%, you could probably get away with a set of ID 1050s and fuel pump boosters, but
10% in 2.4 is a lot of boost. If you run corn, it's a big fuel requirement. So really, if you're going to do corn, I mean, we've done it with 1,000 cc's and boosters, but it requires the pumps really be on their game, and that's you can't
always bank on that.
Yeah, like fuel pumps, especially over time. Like you have a brand new car and the fuel pumps are great, and then like a couple years later, 10,000 miles later,
the socks are a little bit clogged, the pressure drop across the pump increases, your fuel pump duty cycle goes up a little bit, and then all of a sudden you're 20 psi fuel pressure at 6,200 RPM, and that injector compensation is just doing its job, but it's not ideal.
So let's give him options. So if we were going to set this car up, we know E85 makes a lot more power because those cars need octane like crazy because of the compression ratio in 13, 14 GT500s. It's 9.2.
Which isn't astronomical, but it seems to be a problem on pump gas fuels more so than the 1112s and stuff like that.
Because the older cars were 8.5 to 1, and that was like great for all the boost they run. So 9.2 compression, they love octane. You could do boosters, 1050s, and E85 and leave the lower alone. On the flip side, you go ahead and do the lower, do the injectors and the boosters, and do gasoline with boostane.
Yeah.
The GT500 video that we've got coming out, we did a Gen 3 on a Trinity, made a really nice number. We just used boostane this time. We didn't mess around with C16 or any of that crap.
Yeah, if it was my personal car, I'd pull the pumps out, sell it to some 5-liter guy that thinks 13, 14 GT500 pumps are God, and then put a real fuel system in the car to where I don't have that concern in the back of my head that my pumps are going to max out in the middle of a 4th gear watt pole.
A nice boost referenced regulator, return system, etc., would alleviate all those concerns. You can run 93 or E85.
Yeah.
Let's see. Philip says 4.6 liter turbo Terminator engine. Want to run a flex fuel sensor to run E85 or gas. What are my options?
Standalone.
Well, you can run a flex fuel sensor.
It just won't do anything.
You won't have a flex fuel tune. It'd be interesting to wire the flex fuel sensor into EGR and use a fuel modifier in the EGR table.
Oh, now we're talking.
And then a spark modifier for EGR. But now we're getting to the woods of things that may be possible versus the things that are realistically going to happen.
The EEC5 is not a very smart computer. It's a very slow, dumb computer, honestly. So
yeah, in my mind, a standalone's a better bet on a setup like that. Like run like a Holley Dominator or something like that with a something with a software configuration to allow ethanol content sensor to be put in and to properly define the tables to change the spark tables and change the stoic of the fuel in the tune.
It can all be done.
I want to throw it out there that Larry Lewis is saying happy birthday to Rebecca.
Oh, I will let her know if she's not watching. We had a cake. We got a cake for her to eat.
Cake day?
Cake day.
Again, it's my birthday last week.
Man, it's cakes like every week now.
Yeah.
Getting into that time of year.
It's that time of year.
All the Christmas babies and New Year's babies. You can't fool me. I know math.
Oh, man. I know math.
Joe says, currently at 840 to the wheel, 100% E85, Gen 3, elevation 5,500 feet, but I'm going down to 3,700 feet. Do I need to do a retune?
Generally speaking, no. Just confirm with us that your pulley combination, even on E85, is still going to be safe and reliable at a lower elevation than you're currently at. But that in and of itself does not necessarily require a tune update.
Slowpoke is asking, are we at Mustang Week in Myrtle Beach? Our team will be leaving here on Thursday and headed to Mustang Week, so they'll be there towards the weekend. And then the week after that, we have some team members that will be hitting Drag Week. So that's kind of where that stands right now.
Yeah, we'll be getting ourselves up to Mustang Week soon enough.
Yeah, towards the end of the week. Eli says, you tested a ported 18 Manny, but didn't test a ported CJ. Did the CJ have a monoblade? Does it matter on boosted cars? I have a Boss Manny on my boosted car. Would make much difference if he switched to an? Would it make much difference if he switched to an 18 manifold?
Boost changes everything because you're forcing the air through. So I'm not nearly as worried about throttle body size.
Yeah.
I mean, runners still so. It's boosted. He didn't say if it's turbo or supercharged.
He did not.
So a turbo engine, anything that makes torque intake manifold wise will spool the turbo faster. And on a centrifugal blower thing, anything that makes more horsepower up top NA will generally make more horsepower up top with a centrifugal blower.
Yeah, and with the throttle body thing, you got to look at pressure drop across the throttle body. When you have a boosted car, your pressure drops across the throttle body at watt isn't as great as it is in a stock intake manifold setup that your engine's trying to suck as much air as possible past that throttle opening, whereas now it's kind of being forced in. So your ratios on pressure drop kind of get skewed all screwy compared to a naturally aspirated car, and things kind of become irrelevant at that point.
Yeah. So let some of those other factors kind of guide your decision there.
Yep, yeah.
Italian Stang, who had a question earlier that we answered, is back again and says, I tracked my car on the road course. I had oil cooling issues. I know it is calculated with an algorithm and not direct. I've installed a Mishimoto oil cooler and soon an oil temp sensor. Is it possible to, quote, trick the CPO to avoid the limp mode? P.S. Car's a 18 GT Performance Pack 1.
So, this is what I think, Joe.
What do you think?
I think the engine coolant temperature is going to run so much cooler with that oil cooler, with that air to oil cooler, that the computer is no longer going to calculate a high oil temp.
It's possible. It's possible that oil cooler will pull some of that engine coolant temp out. To his other question of whether or not there's a way to defeat the did you say cat over temp for failsafe? I'm not a fan of an oil-related over temp except for like GT350 and stuff like that.
I think he's talking about the inferred oil temp logic.
Well, there's rev limiters based on EOT. So is he talking about a reduced rev limiter based on EOT?
Probably something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Because the GT350 would do it. It was a thing that usually came hand in hand with high coolant temps, so people never really paid attention to the oil temp side of things. Now, of course, the GT350s, if you had the track pack one, it had an oil cooler too. I imagine if you drove it hard enough, you could still overheat it.
Yeah, I know that people were having problems with the diffs overheating.
Yeah.
Was that the stock cars that didn't have the rear diff coolers?
Yeah, it was the non-track pack ones, because I had a non-track pack GT350.
Okay.
I wasn't good enough to drive it hard enough to trigger that at Sebring.
Although I don't think... Oh, you're saying other people at Sebring were able to drive the cars hard enough to get it into that...
get it into some
burning
type
up the diff?
Yeah, you know, diff over temp protection.
Goddamn.
But to his original question, I mean, if it came down to it, we could probably find a tuning solution to it, but I think you're probably going to be okay with an air-to-oil cooler.
Okay.
Biggest thing is look at airflow, open grills, any air you can get out of the hood, not at the cowl, not at the windshield, because that's a high-pressure area, but
yeah, that's what I was going to say.
midway.
Make sure you can open up airflow all you want at the face. You just got to make sure you're getting a pressure drop across whatever core you're using to cool something, because if you don't get a pressure drop, you're not really doing anything for airflow.
Yeah. Front splitters help actually keep air from getting under the car, create a low pressure area.
Race car stuff.
Race car stuff. Thought I saw... Dorian says, I'm late, but I'm here. Did I miss anything?
Hi, Dorian.
Of course, he's looking for 18 Coyote stuff, car or truck. So, do you have any information on anything?
Not yet.
Any new news?
Soon.
I saw Justin driving the 18. Was it Friday?
My brother.
Oh, your brother.
My
Oh,
brother
man.
took the 18.
Man.
Yeah.
You two look a lot alike from 60 feet away.
He should be actually back over today with the car.
Oh, man.
Too funny. Juanito says, you guys are great. I recently got a custom tune from you guys, and he's very happy. I got
Awesome.
a Mustang GT PP. My question is, can I make around 450 to the wheel with my JLT cold air and 18 intake manifold and a VMP tune?
Does he say whether it's manual or auto?
He does not.
Okay. I will assume it's manual then, because I don't remember whether your car was automatic or manual. If it's manual, very possible you can make 450 wheel. I'd say it's more likely on E85 if those are your only mods. If you were on 93 and you had long tubes and it was like, I guess even a catted setup at that level wouldn't be an issue. But if it's a, what we'll call FBO.
Full bolt on.
Yeah, full bolt-on car. It's very likely that you can put down 450 wheel, but on a setup like that, I'd rather see it on E85 to make that assumption that it'd make 450 wheel.
Gives us a lot more leeway as tuners.
And consistency from the standpoint of spark tolerance.
Yeah, we can put all the time we want in it to make the number.
Mm-hmm.
The pulley combo on the elevation question that we just got a second ago, he says, I run just a 2.4 upper on the VMP Gen3.
Oh, that's all of it.
That should be fine then, I think. You're only going down like 1,000, 1,500 feet.
Yeah, he's going down from like 5,500 to like 3,700 or something.
Okay.
So
yeah,
that should be fine.
Okay. Eric says, does Dynatech have headers for the 18 GT?
Yep, they're on our car.
Fact.
As a matter of fact, we did a video on that not long ago.
Oh yeah.
Yep, yeah.
I drove around and I just said, it sounds so good.
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't really say that, but...
Kind
Thought you
of.
did though.
I kind of did.
In a matter of speaking.
Yeah, I got into a lot more detail.
Kind of, yeah, there's more detail, but we do have a whole video on it on our YouTube channel. Become a subscriber. You'll get the notifications. Ryan says, please push your 11 GT500 to failure so we know what not to do. Thank you.
Oh, that sounds like fun. Let's do it.
Yeah, don't break your car so I don't have to.
Yeah.
Yep.
Joe, wait a second. I thought you wanted to buy that car for me now.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. He's saying, break your car so I don't have to.
Oh, so I don't have to. Okay.
Yeah, him, the guy that's wondering about where the safe point is.
Maybe we need to make a bunch of horsepower, break it, build it, and then I'll sell it to you and I'll get a 19 or 20 GT500.
So
are they going to be 20 now?
I think so.
Lewis wants to know. He says, I want to upgrade my supercharger on my GT500. So, what supercharger do you recommend? It's a 2008 GT500.
Well, you could port the stock supercharger, and you could make 600 rear-wheel horsepower with full bolt-on stock supercharger.
You can wring that rag dry.
Yeah. FBO GT500. We've coined a new 7-letter acronym.
Oh, man.
No, 8-letter acronym. No, seriously, we've been messing with GT500s for a long time. We got our Gen2R and our Gen3 that work really, really well for anywhere from 650 wheel to 800 wheel.
If you have cams, you can go higher than that.
Yeah, we've made 1,000 wheel, which is like 1,200 crank horsepower. So that'll get her done for you, depending on. We've got some different packages for different levels. If your car's totally stock, we've got all the GT500 stuff you need. Give us a call, basically.
Sam says he's got a 17 Roush on a 79 millimeter pulley, 56-pound injectors, BAP, and 93 tune. Can I do a 75 millimeter pulley on my 109 octane tune or the 93 in boostane?
If you have the 56-pound injectors, you can do a 75 on the MS-109 tune.
With the octane.
With the octane. You cannot, I shouldn't say you cannot, because you physically can. You would be able to, if you so chose, run on the 75 and physically drive it on 93, but I would not recommend getting into boost on 93 octane.
James says, I'm running Cook's 1/7/8 long tube with Corsa Extreme Catalyst, double X pipe, JLT, CAI, and 18 ported Manny. Seeing around 26 degrees on 93. Would I be anywhere close to the same as your outcome?
I'd say probably, just based on your timing alone, 10, 15 horsepower less, tops.
Okay. Micah says, how much NA power do you think I could make with full bolt-on a 18 GT500 with Gulf Mach 115 unleaded?
Similar to what we made on E85, which on a full bolt-on car was a 500 wheel without too much trouble.
But that 115, it's nice to see they've gone to odd numbers instead of even numbers.
Yeah, can't have everyone in the industry using even numbers.
Jeff Scarlin wants to know, have you heard of Pump E85 having problems lately where the gasoline is mixed horribly and it's taken down motors?
I have not heard anything about that.
INR said, I saw the porting on the 18 help with torque, but I guess the 18 loses some torque on the stock 15 to 17 until 5 to 6K. But as the Coyote is all about revs, and with the 373, it will not be a big loss on the street. Correct?
I agree.
Aaron Clancy wants to know, when's the Gen 3 going to be ready for 2019?
We're looking at how we're going to do 18, 19, and 20 Coyotes. So it's being looked at.
Matthew says, have y'all dynoed the Roush 2650 on an F150 yet?
We have.
Richard says, how can I get 500 plus to the wheel from an 18 Mustang keeping it NA?
18 Mustang stuff is popular today.
It is.
Yeah.
500 wheel, long tubes, colder intake, E85.
I consulted on one of these builds too recently, and I'd recommend doing the ported intake just for good measure, because if you want that magical 500 number, the 18 motor is bad arse, but
all the airflow you can get will help.
Yeah. And on that note, I mean, we're going to try some throttle body options, but it doesn't seem to be a huge factor. Like, I wouldn't run out and buy a larger throttle body right away. I would do other stuff first.
Yeah, and that's what, it's kind of in line with what I tested on GT350 intake manifold, stock throttle body versus 90, stock throttle body versus GT350 87.
Ivan says, is it bad running water meth 50/50 on a PD F150 50?
I wouldn't say it's bad to do so.
Yeah. I don't know that it helps, but that's not bad.
Yeah. I'm in the same boat.
Tori says, so here is where I'm at. An 05 GT stock motor internals. Vortec V3, 10 PSI, and M1 meth injection. T6060 trainee. I have a 5.4 block that I want to forge and move my heads and vortex over to with 14 PSI. So, any issues tuning that, or any recommendations on engine work, or any recommendations? Engine work I'm capable of doing myself.
If you want to bring it to us, be dynoed, I don't see any issues with tuning that. Via email, I don't believe I'd be interested in tuning that.
Ivan says, is it bad running? Well, Ivan asked the same question that we just asked.
Hot diggity daffodil.
I know, right? Same thing. Shun says, any horsepower numbers on the 2650 on a 0304 Cobra?
There's lots of horsepower numbers out there for that now. Should we make a collective post of hey, look at all the cool things 2650 did on Cobras?
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we'll get some numbers more publicly available, because some of those numbers are only posted in certain forums, and then some of them are emailed to us and dyno sheets from other shops. So
Yeah.
it's nice to get you guys those dyno numbers in like one location so you can look at them.
Josh says, have you seen the advanced Fuel Dynamics ProFlex Commander E85 fuel system? They claim they make more power with stock tuning and E85 and even more with custom tuning. Seen this system on a GT350 and curious for use on my own GT350 versus getting a dedicated E85 tune.
If I recall
Whatever.
If I call that kit directly, it's changing injector pulse width based on ethanol content percentage on the sensor.
Those products were developed for fleets that had to convert to E85. You know, like they're correcting for fueling with pulse width, like Joe said, and they're not doing anything else performance-wise that you would normally do with E85. Like, they're basically hoping the NOx sensor will advance timing.
My only problem with that is that they're not changing fuel mass in the tune.
Yeah, it's a Band-Aid. So it's like
they're making it work by making the injector larger than it needs to be, but I just don't like that way of doing things. I like this is my stoic point. This is what fuel's going to be in it. Command everything properly for that, not making it work.
It's just like people. When you talk to the computer the right way and tell it what it needs to know, it works better.
That's not to say that it won't make power. At the end of the day, it's still E85, but to me, that's not the right way to do things.
So Matthew Gordon, who wanted to know whether or not you've dynoed the Roush 2650 on an F150, he wants to know what did it make?
That was Donnie. I want to say it was like, what, 480, 520 wheel on the stock Roush tune?
It was hard to get a good number because the 10-speed trans has got so many gears and you hit a rev limiter at like 95 to 105 mile an hour. So I don't think we ever got a real clean pull.
No, and we didn't get a very high RPM pull out of it because of that. I think we'd have to do like a first or second gear pull in the truck to get it to do that.
The customer specifically wanted a warranty. So to retain the warranty, it could not be tuned.
Yep.
Wants to know, do you guys offer a flex fuel tune?
No. We need that banner back.
Yeah.
We need the banner back, yes.
Bring back the banner.
No flex fuel tunes.
We like to have dedicated tunes for E85 or pump gas.
If that were the case, I have a flex fuel vehicle, but
I do too.
Not the case.
I can't put flex fuel in it anymore though.
Sam says, from a 79 millimeter to a 75 millimeter, what's the power difference?
79 to 75 on what blower?
Ooh.
General rule of thumb, if the blower is good from an efficiency standpoint, your cold air intake's large enough and your throttle body's large enough, your exhaust is free of restriction, we'll call it 15 to 20 horsepower on a pulley change, one size down.
17 Roush is what he says.
All my other little asterisks still apply.
Gonza, let's see here. Oh, Gonza in 60 seconds. Got it.
I see what you did there.
Is there a big difference in how much timing that can be run between 93 and 104 octane on a boosted application?
Yes.
Depends on compression too. Because like if you're talking 93 on a 8.5 to 1 motor versus 93 on a 11.5 to 1 motor, how close is the engine to MBT?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So like, can you run more timing on E85 in almost every application? Absolutely. But how much is the car going to gain versus 93 is going to change drastically, compression and engine based.
He had a totally stock car.
He says Coyote ProCharger.
Coyote ProCharger.
12 PSI.
Okay.
So there should be a decent difference for you going from 93 to E85.
And it's just, you know, your tuner can get more aggressive without having to worry about it.
Yeah, and depending on how aggressive your tuner currently is being is going to change how much you get from a gain on the car. Because some tuners will run a setup like that at 15, 16 degrees, where on good 93, if you let the NOx sensor adder do its thing, it may take 18 to 19, depending on what you're at for like load and fuel quality. But if if they're kind of tuning to that middle ground common denominator stuff, then you may gain a significant amount going to an ED5 tune from them.
We are now at 2:34. I still have a handful of questions I'd like to get through, but I think that we should probably start.
Yeah, let's
feathering down,
wrapping it up
real quick.
Yeah, try and grab the new fresh ones instead of rehashing stuff we talked about 10 times.
Yeah, so Slapshack says in your 18 horsepower Gen3 GT500 video, you went back up in pulley sizes to show the difference with the new monoblade, which is about 20 horsepower. Is there a cold air intake too small to benefit from the 160?
Probably a stock cold air would be too small to benefit from a 160.
Yeah.
At that boost level at least.
And we've got special couplers for the 160 to fit the 123 and also the 148 cold airs. It just depends on where you are in the curve, because the 123 actually flows flows a lot of air. But like Joe said, a stock cold air would be too small.
Yeah. Dave Murdoch, one of our customers, says, "Hey guys, remember me, the 15 Orange Roush? Love the JLT cold air and tune you guys sent."
Awesome.
He will be back to dyno to see if he can hit 900 flywheels since 865 before. Should be close. What do you think?
It's possible that you'll pick up a pretty large amount like that, but that's a pretty substantial amount of power to pick up, whether you're talking flywheel or rear horsepower, just from a cold air on your setup. If I recall correctly, you're on like a 75 or 72 millimeter pulley. If you really wanted to party on race gas, we could go down in pulley size and really make sure we're going to get you there. But I guess just consult us as needed on that.
Shun Gray says, "I have the Gen 2 with 3.0 upper and 4 pound lower, making 747 horsepower and 680 torque. How much will I make if I go with the new 2650 at the same PSI?"
Same boost, I'd probably say 20 horsepower more.
What application was it?
0304 Cobra, I believe, since he said 3.0 and 4 pound.
3.0 and 4 pounds. So you'd have to go up to a 3.3.
And even then, you'd probably still be a pound more.
Yeah, I'd probably make like 20 to 40 more. And one of the results I got over the weekend was a lot more torque from his Gen 3 swap. But the big thing is you're just about maxed out on a 2.3 and without doing engine mods and camshafts and stuff like that. Maybe you've already done those. He said 7.4, how much?
740, I thought.
740.
That's a pretty high number for a stock.
Yeah.
747.
747. So with Gen 3, you're now up there with like a 3.3 pulley. You're making more power, so you got more pulley to go down.
And I'd say the thing that I think a lot of people are missing here is the headroom that 2650 provides.
Right.
For when you do more upgrades in the future, like cams or built motor, it's not that it's not better at the same boost level. It's just that wasn't the whole idea or the big picture with going with a larger supercharger.
Right. Right.
It helps at the same boost, but run more boost.
Right.
Eric wants to know, if I add long tube headers to my 18 GT, does it need to be tuned at the same time, or can I wait and do the tune in cold air later?
So is he
wants to put long tube headers on it, not tune it. You could tune it. You could do that.
And then just tune it when you do the cold air.
Yeah.
Ivan wants to know, are there any video updates on your build, Joe?
There are no video updates on my build. There's no video updates that VMP has. There's videos of me messing around on closed roads and stuff, but not anything.
And he wants to know, what are your
for you
mods
guys.
at the moment?
My mods are MBRP, dual exit side exhaust, and a VMP Gen2R blower on a 79 millimeter pulley. I think it's about 10.5, 11 pounds.
TC Basketball 33 says, I just bought an 11 Mustang GT that already had a Gen 1 supercharger. Would it be worth it to go to a Gen 2 housing? This is my daily, and as of right now, it's not seeing the track.
We don't currently sell Gen 2 or Gen 2R housings unless some super special circumstance thing that we magically have another Gen 2R housing laying around. I'd say that it'd probably be a good idea instead of, I guess at the end of the day, it depends on what your goal is and what you're willing to justify dollar per horsepower wise, but I'd say ditch a Gen 1, sell it, or use it as a trade-in and go to a Gen 3 blower.
That's going to be probably the best bang for your buck.
Yeah, because you could in theory trade in, or you couldn't trade in it on a Gen2R, but you could sell your Gen 1 blower and buy a Gen2R, and that's going to give you a decent horsepower jump in and of itself. But to me, if you're going to go through the trouble of pulling a TVS off to put another one on, at least bump it up to the next displacement level of TVS.
Yeah, that's going to make the biggest difference because it's more efficient at the same boost level. It has more headroom. Because unless you're maxing out a Gen 1, going to a Gen 2R is better. But like Joe said, it's not a huge, huge jump.
I have 2 more questions and a comment, and then we're done.
Okay.
How much timing can you run on a 2010 GT500 fully bolt-on with Ford Performance blower?
What fuel is it on?
Yeah, something like that's usually around 16, 17 degrees. I've tuned a lot of those Ford Performance blowers. There's power to be gained. They really need a bigger injector. Not crazy about how they did things back then. I mean, we all did things like that back then. But
the throttle limiting Ford Cal for injector? Or?
I think it was the Whipple kit for Performance. It could be a TV. It could have been the TVS kit.
I was thinking like the old hair-up nose drive TVS kit.
There's some of those out there, rated at 660 horsepower. I mean, whatever it is, with the right mods, we can get a lot more out of your setup. Just kind of contact us with an engine bay picture.
D is, who asked about the Flex tunes, says, thanks for the banner, LOL. I knew I didn't see a Flex in your drop-down box, just making sure.
No problem there, kid.
Mike wants to know, who was asking about the Coyote swapped Hellcat. What's the fastest NA 18 GT50 running in the 1320? Do you know?
I want to say that's... Was it Steeda's car, or did Lund do a car that beat Steeda's car?
Steeda's doing like 1060. I don't know what anybody else is doing.
Okay.
And with that, it's a wrap.
Like, subscribe, and share. We will see you next time, everybody.
Have a good day, guys, and I guess a good week.